Welcome home, Mama. Welcome home. Back in our home studio, and you are dressed like a polar bear.
Yeah, well, there's no heating in the tiny home, and so I have gotten myself a lap blanket. I thought maybe it wouldn't show, but then I just showed it. I think that lap blankets are highly underutilized, and I see why people like them. When you put them on, they're quite lovely.
Is this because I brought up that I liked the Sherpa chair back in Texas last week?
No.
Are you sure?
I just really like it, and I'm going to start wearing one now.
What do you think the temperature is in here? Because I can tell you, I checked before you sat down. Don't look for it.
55.
59.
That's cold. That's cold
close.
for inside.
It is definitely fall now. It feels a lot different in here. We just left Texas last week. We had a great trip. It was very, very warm. Please don't hide behind the blanket.
It's so nice. It's a new blanket. It has my name on it.
It was a really fun trip that we had. It was really hot down in Texas, 95 degrees for most of the trip. And then coming back here today was nice. But you notice back in walking back in here that neighbors are now burning fires in their wood stoves, and like it just smells like fall.
Yeah. Fall is in the air for sure. When are we going to start burning fires in the wood stove in here so that I don't have to wear a lap blanket? And
we have to either run the space heater for a period of time before we come in here, or we can build really small fires in the wood stove. But then you know what's going to happen is that it's going to be like a sauna.
I'd rather be hot than cold. It's really cold. I can't even drink my iced wine. I'm so old right now.
The ice cubes don't melt. So what did you think of our trip to Texas?
It was great. It was so good. I have a fear of travel. It's not that we're going to crash in the airplane or that like someone's going to mug us or anything like that. It's literally viruses that I fear. I am so afraid of getting sick on the way there and then spending the whole vacation sick because our kids are bubble children. And so if they are within a mile of any coughing. So as we're getting on the plane, I'm surveying the waiting room and I hear that, and like there were a lot of people coughing in that waiting room. And I was like, great, we're getting on a big tube with these people. In the terminal,
you mean? At the airport?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there were some people that were like there was one little kid that was like, he had that wet rattle cough. And I was like, he's going to be right behind me.
Phlegmy cough.
Yeah. So we made it. We did it. We went there. We were on the trip. I feared the viruses the whole time. We got back. I counted the 72 hours after return. And then I was like, holy cow.
Success.
6 people, 2 airplanes, the hotel, the restaurants, thousands of people at the conference. Bam.
Have we adequately addressed your germophobia? We've just mentioned it before, right?
I don't think, yeah. Well, do we want to go that crazy?
It's borderline
yeah, it holds me back.
Yeah.
It holds me back from, this is like not even being funny. Like it holds me back from having friends sometimes, from going places, from wanting to travel. I have a extreme fear of, it's not really bacteria. Well, actually, I'm very scared of foodborne bacteria. So I cook the junk out of meat. Like I will destroy meat.
Because you didn't used to be like this. How did this happen?
I think kids, as I started having kids and then they started getting viruses and stuff, it scared me. I hate seeing them sick. And so then I started to do whatever I could to prevent them from getting sick, which I know kids are supposed to get viruses, good for their immune system. But I really hate seeing them not feeling well. And then when you have 4 kids, one person gets it and you're like, oh, it's on.
Yeah.
2 weeks, it's going to be like battlefield.
It's borderline unreasonable though, right? Like every time you say something, you make a remark or you bolt your eyes out at me when
when someone coughs?
Something's going on. And Nevaeh and I especially always look at each other like, it's mom. It's mom being mom right now.
Yeah.
She's doing her mom thing.
Yeah, no, I wish I could turn it off, but I can't.
So going back to the trip, we were in these large conference rooms and these big banquet style rooms. Did you have any big takeaways from at least so we went there for Vid Summit, which is a YouTube conference, and we were invited to go for the second consecutive year. We enjoyed our experience the first year. This year was a little different. It was down in Texas for one, and there were a few different speakers that we got to listen to. What was your general takeaway from the experience?
We are old.
We are old.
Yeah, we were not the oldest, but we were some of the oldest people there. We were definitely in the top 10%.
We're not old. We're kind of old for the space and the type of crowd that events like that have a tendency to attract.
Yeah, well, that conference is really for new YouTubers to go, because that's kind of what it is. It's like how to YouTube.
It's how to YouTube, but it's how to take what it is you're already doing, regardless of how big or small you are, and how to improve or build upon it.
That's true. That's true. But it does attract a lot of new YouTubers, which tend to be like 17 to 21. So that room was filled with youth, and they just radiated youth and opportunity. And I guess I just felt like I could be everyone's mom. There were multiple people there calling me mom. Yeah. I was helping them with their bracelets. They didn't know the trick on how to loosen their bracelets.
Melissa has developed a young little clique for herself, and all of these 20-year-old young men refer to her as mom.
YouTube mom.
Which makes me feel great.
Yeah. Well, I just make sure they're taken care of, like that they're not getting taken advantage of. And I've been in the space long enough, and I feel like I'm very protective, and that I have nothing to gain by like helping these boys. I guess they're all boys.
You just can't help yourself. You're a mom 24/7.
Yeah, like their moms aren't there. And I feel like if their moms were there, they'd be like, like watching out for them, but they're not. And so I'm there. And so I'll do it. Like I'll be anyone's mom at like the park or So I'm YouTube mom, and I'm very proud of my boys.
So we enjoyed ourselves for the most part, right? It was great just being down in Texas, but you said that as far as the conference goes, and I definitely felt the same way. I was hiding up in our hotel room for most of it. You said that you felt a little out of place.
Yeah, I did.
Was that just an age thing, or was it because of how it is that we function when compared to a lot of the other folks and a lot of the advice that's given at these conferences?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a combination of everything. It was our age. It was the kind of videos that we make. They kind of go against everything that they teach there.
Yeah, it goes completely against the grain. When I was listening to people talk, I'm like, yeah, we do the opposite of pretty much everything you just rattled off.
Yeah. But I mean, these young people are there, and they're listening to speakers that have built empires. They have 100 employees. They own production companies, like kind of like who Zach King was,
right?
Or is who we talk.
Yeah, who Zach King we spoke to on the last episode of the podcast.
Yeah,
yes.
He's still around. I spoke to him like he was in the past tense. So he has a production company, and really, I mean, they've got editors and people that just come up with ideas, and it's amazing. It's so inspiring. But it's not what we do, and it's not what we want to build. Yeah. So I think if I were 18, I would be there going, yeah, I'm going to do that. And that would probably be where my mind was.
Yeah. And we touched upon this with Zach, but it seems like, there's such a long road to be navigated between the way it is that we do things, which is very simply, we just do everything in-house ourselves. And then people like him who rely upon the help of a team that they have. I mean, all employees in his case, to come up with these videos. And these videos are all kind of standalone productions. And that's just not the way that we do things.
Yeah, ours is kind of like this ongoing story. It's just our life. Like we make a video every week, and it's what we're doing that week. And we don't create stories or ideas. There's no idea board because it's our real life. It's not like spectacle video is what I call it, where like each video stands alone, and it's like this week, we had our kids only eat red food for 24 hours. Like that's a spectacle video.
And a lot of it is like storyboarded ahead of time, and not, I won't say scripted, but it's very contrived. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but they kind of know what, there's the story arc model of having a conflict and a resolution and climax, all that kind of stuff. And I guess the natural flow of things for us, we sort of resemble those types of recommended charts and flows. But it's not done consciously. The story kind of unfolds. We don't know what's going to happen, so we take it as it comes and we document things that way. But it was really interesting to me that it seems as though, there's like very standardized practices as far as like the recommendations that are given to so many people that are just getting into YouTube or have been doing YouTube for a while. And at least a portion of what was frustrating to me about the conference is that I feel like YouTube is it's such a wide, vast sea of content and different people doing different things in different ways, and documenting it in different ways. And so to hear a lot of the same sort of recommendations being given out to people was like a little frustrating, because it's like, it's not one way or nothing. It's there are a number of ways, and that's kind of where the artistic element of what it is that so many people do online comes in.
Yeah, I think there's two different kinds of YouTubers. I think there's one that wants to build this big business or this empire, this corporation, and they want to have employees, and they want to spin off, and they want to have like all these products and this and that, and grow it into this multi-dimensional thing. And then there's a whole nother side of YouTube that are people just seeking freedom, which is why we kind of fell into YouTube. And we were looking for an escape from the 9 to 5. We were looking for an avenue to be able to come out here and build the dream that we had talked about since we got married. We never wanted to make spectacle video. We never wanted to have employees.
No.
This was never meant to be like a business. It was just meant to give us freedom.
Correct.
And so I think there's a lot of people that fall in that category that kind of get forgotten during these conferences. And so they may attend this conference and then not be able to take a lot away from it, or become very overwhelmed and go, oh my gosh, you have to do that in order to succeed?
Yeah.
Shoot, I don't know how to do that. And maybe this isn't for me.
I just feel like a part of the message should be that, again, it doesn't have to be this way. You can do it how, and I think the best thing, the things that come across so well online are when people pursue their passions. And take this podcast, for example. It wasn't a matter of us trying to find a recipe that was recommended based on success. It's about pursuing your passions and the things that you feel called to do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if, you have a channel on Japanese origami. If that's your life's passion, that translates and it comes across. And I just wish there was a little more of that sort of speech that was given.
Yeah, like maybe you don't need to have all these idea people if you're just doing what is true to you. And I mean, we're never going to become these giant YouTubers doing what we're doing, but that's okay because it gives us the freedom. It allows us to live the life that we want to live and spend time with our children.
I think we just have very different desires, and that's the reason that we don't fit in, right?
Maybe. Yeah, but there were people that were like amazingly nice that I was so excited to meet.
Yeah, incredibly inspiring people.
And then there were people that I was really excited to meet that, they say like never meet your heroes. That kind of rang true at the conference.
Do you view anybody on YouTube as your hero? I know you're using that very casually.
That's just a saying. No, they're not my heroes.
Of course.
But if you watch someone and you have a perception in your mind of what they're like, and then you meet them in person and they're not like that at all, it's a letdown, so I wish people would just kind of be who they are and not create a character, or I guess in person, you kind of have to be aware. It's almost a responsibility if you put yourself out there, be aware that it's scary to go up to somebody and say hello and put yourself out there. I mean,
Whatever do you mean? Explain.
I did it a few times and sometimes it went well.
No, you're downplaying this. There was one interaction that you had in particular where you sought somebody out.
There were two.
There's one that went very poorly. And I don't want to make this a very negative thing. The conference, again, we met a lot of really amazing people, a lot of really, really hardworking people, and drew a lot of inspiration from a ton of folks, including like a lot of these 18 to 23-year-old, I would call them kids, but really young people that are doing just absolutely amazing things. But there are exceptions to every rule. And with this one person in particular, who shall remain nameless, you went up there and kind of gushed over them and said, hey, huge fan of what you do.
I mean, I'm an awkward person, so it probably came across that way.
You describe yourself as gushing.
I was excited that I saw them. I was like, oh, I spotted them from the escalator. And then I just went right over there and I was like, hey. And then it went really awkwardly. And then I felt like I was 1 inch tall. And like, I just hope that I never make somebody feel that way.
You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
No, not really.
Are you sure? Because it literally became a thing amongst like a lot of the people that were putting the conference on. Like, word had spread.
That just made it worse.
Not because of us, but because the person that she is referring to, I think, caught wind of the fact that, hey, you maybe should have taken a second to kind of feel this situation out because...
Well, I don't think he thought that like I was a fellow YouTuber or podcaster or anything like that. And I just caught him at a very bad time. It was just a perfect storm. It went weird. And then like stuff started being said and then things were being relayed back to me.
I feel like you have to sort of explain it a little bit.
I really don't want to. It's so embarrassing.
No, can I kind of explain it a little bit? Come on, really?
God, it's so bad. And like,
it's not horrible.
It was bad.
You went up to somebody, you just wanted to credit them and say, hey, I appreciate what it is that you do. That person kind of scoffed at you and literally like
scoffed. He just wanted to get away. Like he was just trying to get away. I was like,
but it wasn't even like you weren't like chasing him down or anything. He was standing in place and he had a bunch of people that he was already talking to.
Right. He was trying to get away from everybody.
You just became a part of that conversation.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So I had approached him after like being pinned to the wall for 2 hours and he was like, I gotta go. And then I come up, right? So it was just a perfect storm. And then I always have to make it more awkward by then reapproaching someone and trying to apologize. Once I like figure out the details, I'm like, oh, I got to tell him sorry. Like there needs to be like a Jiminy Cricket or something on my shoulder that's like, no, Melissa.
No.
Don't reapproach.
You were not in the wrong in this case.
Don't say sorry.
You were not in the wrong in this case. It was like
I think I should have left it alone.
But there should be zero issue or problem with you going back up for a second time and then just speaking your piece. No, because
going in for more.
The way that you're describing it, and maybe the way that people are envisioning it, I don't think it's coming across accurately. You have to. That's why I'm saying maybe provide a little insider detail.
So then I tried to go up afterwards, like later when this person was alone, and I thought this is a good opportunity. And again, that person on my shoulder should be like, no, leave them alone. And I was like, hey, I just wanted to say, and then, like, it was like, he's like, and then just spun away from me and like wanted to leave. And then I was just standing in the middle of the room like, oh no. Like I felt even stupider. Like I should have just left it alone. More stupid. Stupider is not a word. Homeschool was the goodest time of my life. So anyway, I made it worse and I felt stupider.
See? This is your own personal insecurity. You did not make it worse. He made it worse given his own conduct.
Just say that because you're my husband. And
I'm not even trying to be like defensive. When it comes to, like, I'm not trying to defend. It was crappy of him, and I know that it was crappy of him because there were a number of people who came up to you and I after the fact to say, you know what? Screw that guy. He is a insert.
Okay, we'll just leave it alone at this point. So I think it was just the perfect storm of just awkward. So I tend to make things awkward because I have no filter. So like if I'm excited to see you, I'm going to come up to you really excited.
Yeah.
And if I'm like annoyed or mad, like you're going to see that on my face. Like there's no real filter here. Like you just sort of get all of me when I talk to you.
One of my favorite things about being your husband is watching how these interactions go sometimes because you don't have a filter and people don't always know what to do with it.
Yeah.
It overwhelms people because I think we are so accustomed in today's day and age of people presenting themselves in a certain way or through a filter or having this veiled persona and appearance that they want to give off. And with you, that's not the case. And a lot of people enjoy and appreciate that, myself included, but a lot of people who don't know you and aren't familiar with you and aren't familiar with that type of interpersonal communication and interaction. Yeah. Literally, I've seen at times just be like, I don't know what to do with this woman.
There's a lot of people who don't quite know what to do with me. So I make a lot of jokes. I'm very sarcastic, but my delivery is very dry. Mm-hmm. So it makes it really hard to know like when I'm joking. Most of the time, I'm joking. Like I say a lot of jokes and I say it very dryly.
I know this because I know you very, very well. But when I see you crack a joke and I hear you laugh because you're hoping that it lands with the other person, and when it doesn't and they don't know what to do or they don't know that you're joking, it's freaking hilarious.
I'm so glad you're entertained. So I've always been this way and I don't know why, like from the time I was a little kid. And it's almost like being drunk all the time, only like I'm not drunk. But you know like how drunk people just be like, man, you're awesome. You're awesome. And I really like the green flecks in your eyes. Like that's like the kind of stuff I would say. Like, and people are like, she's drunk. But I'm not. Like I'm just saying my piece. And so I don't know. I kind of wish more people were more, I'm blunt like a child, I guess.
No, I appreciate it. I absolutely appreciate it. I just think, again, I don't think we function. We live. I feel like we've reached a point where we've lived so isolated for so long that we're not really good with social situations because we're almost like out of practice.
Yeah.
Which is really weird and something I didn't anticipate in moving out here. But there are weeks, literally, there can be like 2-3 weeks where I will go without really having a conversation with a person because I will spend. It's not a rarity that I spend a full solid week here on the property and nowhere else. Like I'll go as far as the mailbox, but that's about it.
Well, I had kind of a weird upbringing kind of as a kid because like at first I was deaf, right? So like I didn't have any friends in kindergarten, and first grade was pretty rough.
Second, third, fourth, fifth grade.
Yeah, it was still weird. You know, I was kind of the special needs kid that got pulled out of class during art.
Right.
And then I was homeschooled. And so that obviously didn't help because I just embraced like all things horses and I had dorky habits. Like I used to paint like Bob Ross and then when I went to public school, it was really hard to fit in because I was kind of blunt. I did try to make jokes. And maybe that's like an insecurity thing where you try to like cover up with humor.
Yeah, it can be. It's definitely a crutch for you and I, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if we get uncomfortable and then we'll make an inappropriate joke.
Yep, all the time,
and then
literally.
It doesn't land in
Even
the
if
room.
it's just you and I, sometimes I'll like crack a joke just because I'm like, internally, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but you play it more cool like in person.
No, in person, I think, see, I don't think I do a very good job because I'm somebody.
You retract.
I retract and I like to observe and watch people because it sounds super awful and ugly, but I like to like form an idea of who a person is.
Ugly. I'm going to continue to explain.
No, I'm just being completely transparent and honest here. Like literally, I will sit back and I think there's so much value that comes from like watching people or listening to people because you begin to understand and you for yourself start to shape who it is that they maybe are. Like that's just your own personal perception, but there's so much value in doing that. So rather than me putting myself out there, I will kind of sit back for an extended period of time, just kind of feel people out. And then once I think I have a feel for them, and maybe this is an old like law enforcement habit. That definitely made it worse. But not until that point will I even like dabble and stick my toe in the water with someone.
Yeah. I can do that too. But then like other times, like if I get excited, I can't like help myself. Got one in. So there was another occasion where I really wanted to have this other creator on the podcast. And I knew that it was like a slim to none chance, like slim to none, super nice guy. So nice. I knew he wasn't going to be rude because like, it's just not in the fiber of his being.
It's not in his nature.
But I was like, I shouldn't ask him because I know he's probably not going to want to. Like there's 99% chance he doesn't know who we are. He doesn't know what our podcast is about. And the rule of podcast is if you don't know the podcast and you don't know if it's like super sketchy or like what they talk about or if they swear or whatever. It doesn't. So
but it's more than podcasts. It's just when you collaborate with anybody.
When you
online.
collaborate, there's risk.
Right.
And so he didn't know us. And so I knew that like the rule of podcast is you say no if you don't know the podcast. So I'm like, I'm just going to put him in a position of saying no. And then I'm going to make him do it in person. And that's rude. And then our friend there, who's like a media guy, he's like the guy that talks to all the celebrities and the big channels for the channel that he works for. He was like, you just got to ask him. And I was like, no, not in person. That's rude. And he's like, no, it's not. He'll just say no. And then you're in no worse position. I'm like, I'm in a way worse position.
Yeah.
Then I'll never want to see him again.
Yeah.
And he's like, just ask him. Like, you never know. What if he says yes? And I'm
That's
like,
a great mentality, but that doesn't jive with the way that we do things.
well, I think it's different for him too, because he's asking on behalf of somebody else.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, if they say no, he's like, cool, you know, but then he doesn't feel personally stupid.
Right.
So I listened to him. And he was like, go now. Like at the end of the luncheon, I was like, okay, he's getting up from his chair. So I go up to him and I do this thing when I get really nervous where like I lean in and I giggle. There's a giggling that happens and then I start to shrug. Like, so I really like you. Like it goes like that. And then I was like, if I go back to Idaho, I gotta, you know, if I go back to Idaho and I don't ask you, then I'm going to really regret it. And then I could kind of see him like, what's she going to ask?
Why is she shrugging?
What is she doing?
That was probably the face.
Does she need medical help?
Look at her shrug.
She can really
Look at her go.
So then I was like, we'd like you to be on our podcast.
Asking with his unsure confidence, shrugging the whole time.
No confidence. Asking
started
like
alternating.
like nobody's gonna want to go on this weird nervous woman's podcast. Like she's so nervous. Like why?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'd be like, there's something wrong with this. So anyway, I could see like this sudden shift in his face. Like I gotta. How do I say no politely? And then I was like, I'm sorry. Like, and then I started like profusely apologizing for asking because I instantly regretted making the nicest person there have to say no to me in person because I've just now put him in an awkward situation.
That's so hard. I mean, you have to ask in that situation, in that case. You don't have to, but if you ever have an opportunity to make it happen, right? Like how often do you have that chance to have contact with that particular person and ask such a question?
If someone was filming and then you would have seen the whole interaction, like I was like, and then when I saw that like he was trying to figure out a way out, I do this thing where I like lean backwards and I start looking like I have to find the nearest exit.
No, but it's cool. But it's such a stark contrast, right? right? Like the way he handled that situation versus the way that
he was so sweet. He's like,
the other guy did.
Think about it. Which
it's a nice, polite way of letting somebody down,
Yeah.
which is, you know, just a respectful, like courtesy thing that you do. And he's a great guy, and I don't blame him for his response at all.
Me either. Not with the way I approached him. So next year maybe he'll come on.
Next year, we're going back next year.
I don't know. We'll see.
Worthwhile. I mean, the kids have a great time.
The kids love it.
I'm of our family, I'm definitely the person who has the least amount of fun at those types of events, but that's a me thing. That's not a knock on the event or anything like that.
Yeah.
But,
just finding where we belong.
Yeah, there's so many great people. I guess that again, we met amazing, incredibly inspirational people who are doing just massive things and building like great, like literal empires and businesses for themselves, and credit to them. It's it's the American dream. It was one of my big takeaways from like looking around the room. So, but the thing that I don't like about it, and the thing that I so oftentimes don't like about social media as a whole, is this entire like this posturing and and this is just with some people, but some of the arrogance that some of the people exude, and the fact that like we those types of people seem to have a tendency to assign value to their peers or just other, you know, their fellow human beings, based completely on the size of the numbers that they have next to their name, whether that be their subscriber number, the amount of views that they get, their amount of, Instagram, is it followers on Instagram? I don't even know.
Yeah, followers.
Whatever the case may be. It's so bizarre to me. And then one like odd interaction that I had was with somebody who is just starting out. I think they're like a year or two into YouTube, and they came and were like, oh, hey, and we had met the year before, and I was like, hey, good to see you again. And, we were having a conversation over like maybe 15, 20 minutes. And toward the end of that conversation, he said, hey, thanks for talking to me. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you know, you're a big deal. And I said, no, I'm not. No, we're not. What do you mean? We're here for the same reasons you are. But there's this weird like mental trick that we all play on ourselves, myself included, to where like we look at these numbers and we literally are like, hey, you're like worth more than I am. And when that couldn't be further from the truth. Yeah. And I came away from that interaction like feeling kind of weird about it. Like, you know, I don't understand why that's the case. And then I wish you didn't feel that way. And I was like, no, hey, like, of course I'm gonna talk to you. We met. I enjoy you. I remembered you from last year. Like, you guys have a great story. I enjoyed speaking to you. You're kind of more along like my line. He says we have a bug in here because we're super professional.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was refreshing to see them again. Like I was like, oh, yay, familiar faces. It was nice to see them again.
Yeah, but what I was saying was like it's such a weird thing, and it's a weird trick that we all play on ourselves, because when we had Zach coming in for the podcast, huge guy, like top level A-lister on the in the social media space, I was nervous as could be.
Me too.
And I guess remember when he walked in the room, we were like, hey, yeah, like thanks for doing this, like whatever we can do to like try to bang this out for you, because I'm sure you're really busy. And he said kind of the same thing, the way that I handled it. He was like, what do you mean? Like, no, I'm here for you guys. I came a day early, in fact, for you guys to do this. And I was just kind of like, what?
He actually wanted to be on our podcast.
Yeah, when really that's just like a genuine,
it was
like
just,
nice, respectful human interaction, you know, like, and which is how it should be. I don't care who you are. We also had some other run-ins with people who were super duper massive on the platform. Yeah. And it was such like I'm not even gonna hold back here. I was absolutely disgusted with the way that some of these people act and treat people, young kids, our kids, like disgusting, despicable behavior. Yeah.
I mean, I think egos can grow when you're really young and you don't have a lot of world experience or life experience. You've never been a wait staff, or like we've done all of those things, and we've had to work all of these jobs, and now we're doing this. But like, I think if you find this instant fame when you're 17 years old or 18 years old, I could see how that can just kind of mess with your psyche. It's like child actors in Hollywood, and then they just don't know anything else.
I get it. And in one case, I almost felt bad for the guy, because it seems like if he wasn't, you know, if he didn't find the success that he has online, then he wouldn't have any friends. He literally wouldn't have any people around him. And it was interesting to see. Like I literally almost felt bad for him for all of his life's successes. I was like, you're kind of in a sad situation as a result of your so-called success. It was weird.
I think that's a lot of people that find fame. I think there's a lot of actors. I mean, I think Mike Tyson was talking about that one time too, where he literally had to pay people to be around him, to hang out with him, come to his house. He had to pay to have a friend group, his posse, that looked like, oh my gosh, look at these followers I have, but they were on his payroll. And that would be, at the end of the day, that would be a really lonely,
It would be
empty thing. And you would always wonder, like, do these people just want something from me? Does anybody actually just want to be around me for me?
Yeah. And that's kind of the goal of our podcast, right? Like, I don't necessarily care. Like I said last week's episode with Zach, I don't care if you're a person of notoriety. I don't care if you're a celebrity. I don't care if you're somebody that, you know, the masses know. I literally don't care. I don't care if you're a shut-in. If you have an interesting story and I find you to be an interesting person, I'd love to talk to you. It should just be as simple as that. And I don't understand why people allow for these other things to get in the way. But at the same time, like I said, I'm guilty of it myself. So it's just kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, it is a weird thing. It's a hard thing to navigate. And I think as you get more and more into like the space, when you do have like people come and reach out and stuff, like you do wonder, like, do they just want to get to know us? Do they just want to be our friends? Or do they want something?
Motives?
Yeah. Do they want something? Do they want to be boosted? Are they trying to boost like their channel and like they don't actually even care about like knowing us?
Right.
So it does make us kind of like retract.
But again, that's such
and protect our family. Like
it's
at the
such
same
a broken
time.
way of thinking. Like when that's the default, but it kind of lends itself to that because the space becomes so murky, and you end up having to question everyone's motives.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
So it makes it really hard to judge other people for doing the same thing, and when they're like 1,000 times bigger than we are, like they probably feel that so much heavier.
I get it.
And
but in the one case, and you know exactly the case I'm talking about, when a bunch of little kids, our
Yeah.
kids run up to you just to say hello and you act the way that you do,
Yeah.
kind of turns me off. Sorry.
Yeah, we're protective of our kids, and that goes back to that never meet your heroes.
No,
but
it's
there were some really great people. We met the Dude
There
Perfect
were.
guys.
The
and
Dude Perfect
they
guys were awesome. Those dudes, you know,
They were perfect.
They're so great. Like I just stepped back and I was watching the kids interact with them, and they were so gracious, so kind, and like they got it. They understood it. You know, like, hey, let me take a minute or two or 5 to chat with you and shake your hand and give you a high five, and they understand. They understand and they get it, and that was great to see. Yeah,
But that's like Zach King. He took the time to watch Kaimani's movie. That meant so much to Kaimani.
Yeah.
It took 15 minutes for Zach King. It meant everything to Kaimani. Like this is something that he'll look back on
it's
in
a lifelong
his life.
memory.
And Zach's a dad. He gets it. He's got sons. He would want somebody to do that for his boys.
Do you think that's the difference with a lot of the people that I'm talking about that have the opposite end of the spectrum mentality?
There's some really nice guys that aren't parents too.
For sure.
But I think it helps because I think when you see someone else's kids, you see like their excitement or the way that they are, you think of your own children. So I think that's like a big thing. I think it definitely helps. And the Dude Perfect guys are all dads. And, you know, so when we were like, oh, our son watched you go to space, like Dude Perfect went to space. That's incredible. Like that's a YouTube on a whole nother level.
Yep.
And I'm like, you go to space like 50 times. And he's like, really? That's awesome. Like, and he was like fist bumping. He was like, you want to be an astronaut? Like, yeah, you can do it. And he was encouraging him.
Yeah.
And as parents, like that means so much. Like you just like went up 1,000 times in my book because you took the time to talk to my child and make them feel like they matter, and stuff like that just matters so much more than anything else or some big number by your name. So
I agree. And so another interesting thing that came up in the time that we were there was, and this came up last week with Zach as well, is the fact that so many YouTubers, and especially a lot of the like bigger ones, people that are finding success at a very early age, it seems like it's a very common thread. And I know he was kind of like on the fence about it, thinking about it like, but it seems in watching and observing, because again, that's what I do, that there are so many of us who are in the public eye because we put ourselves out there, we post ourselves online. But when it comes to the interpersonal interaction, so many of us are withdrawn. And I saw a lot of people just like sitting off in the corner, like people that I recognized that just seemed very uncomfortable with everything. And it's weird that there's this common thread of like people being introverted, but being comfortable in talking to a lens and talking to a camera and having a very bubbly personality when the camera's on. It's just kind of an odd observation on my part.
Yeah. I said the conference in a way was like the island of misfit toys.
Yeah,
like
it did feel that way.
Yeah, there was a lot of like really strong introverted personalities there, but they were all really quirky. And they were kind of like me in that they, you know, like in like no filter and just like, oh, hey, I like this and this. And I mean, there was one guy that does like pretty big spectacle stuff. He's really loud. he's very like he'd be an extrovert. And then I just kept seeing him by himself or being really quiet. And then our kids went up to him because they recognized him. And then he was like, "What do you guys do?" And he's like, "I hate this." Like, because it was like the end of it and he was just overwhelmed. I was like, "Oh, we live in North Idaho. We built a house," and he's like, "In the forest?" I was like, kind of.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, he's not from this country. And so he was like, "I'd like to live in the forest." He's like, "I'll come visit you." So, but he's like, "I live in LA. I would like to live in the forest, in the mountains." And so I think, I think there's a lot of people like us there, but
like us, but not. Again, I did not feel like we fit in at all at any given portion of the conference, honestly.
I don't know.
And I think a big part of that is age, like you said, but I think a lot of it is the fact that a lot of these like 20 to 25-year-old kids have grown up with the internet, have not had like these face-to-face conversations. And so they're so used and accustomed to like staring at their phone or staring at their tablet or watching their TV and having that mold the person that it is that they've become now as a young adult. And so it's just really, really interesting to me to see the different personalities. Even some of the people that are just like I said, are huge and have these like super over the top personalities. When you see them in person, they're literally hugging a wall or off to the side with their spouse or their friend or sitting completely by themselves in the case of one girl who I was very, very impressed with. But yeah, it's just an interesting quality that so many of us seem to have.
Yeah. I wonder why. Maybe we're just more comfortable talking to the camera. I think public feedback is a difficult thing. And if you are comfortable or you're outgoing, then maybe you can handle that better. Because I think people that are really outgoing in a weird way do have more of a filter. They've learned like what lands, what doesn't. They're confident in what they're saying. And then, you get us weird homeschool theater kids and we just don't know how to handle that. And I mean, I don't know. I forgot where I was going with that.
I don't know. I just thought that was weird. And I think it's the difference and maybe part of the reason, another reason that we don't feel as though we fit in the space as a whole. Yeah. Because, like you said, we both had careers and jobs that we worked prior to this. The overwhelming majority of the interactions that we've had have been face-to-face. Like when I was back in law enforcement, I'm contacting multiple people every day, hearing them out, oftentimes they're very stressed out, but I'm having to actively listen to them and try to interpret their thoughts and feelings. And it's a practice. And I feel like so many of these young kids haven't had that. And maybe that's where some of the separation lies.
I remember what I was saying.
Go ahead.
Feedback.
Yeah.
When you're talking to a camera, there's no feedback. So I'll say something or you'll say something and we'll think it's really funny and it will make the cut. And then like, there'll be no comments about that funny thing.
What the heck?
And we'll be like, okay, they didn't think that was funny, but it's not instant feedback and there's no embarrassment there because it's like if something doesn't land, like you just don't get any feedback and that's fine. And you forget about it anyway. I don't know that
it is fine. I think there's a lot of value to come from getting feedback, like that immediate feedback from people.
No, I mean like in a video, you don't feel bad. Like if you make a joke and nobody says it was funny, you know what I mean?
Sure. But I think that can get out of hand at the same time. Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Like in person, when you get that instant feedback, that's when I do the lean in and the shrug. And then I get the like didn't land. And that's when I do the like must find exit. Right. Like where I pull back and then I'm like,
But that's valuable information. You change and adapt based on the feedback that you're getting from people over time, right? Like, hey, I've tried this like 10 times and nobody seems to think that it's funny, but you know what I mean? And that's why I think, again, something else that you see is like people becoming very like out of touch with reality.
Yeah.
And when living so intensely in the online world.
Yeah, the online world definitely like, as a creator, if you're creating from home and you're talking to a camera, you're not getting that instant feedback. You don't realize until you end up in like a large public situation what works and what doesn't.
That's a slippery slope. I can think of one situation in particular where people, things just get out of hand because maybe they're not getting some of that feedback. And so they're very out of touch and lack that self-awareness that, people on a day-to-day basis would have out in the world.
Yeah, like, hey, you're being a jerk.
How about that?
Yeah, I think that's true too. I think you can get away with a lot of stuff online as well. A lot of, because you don't have someone that's there to punch you in the nose. So
yeah, that too. Also a thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's just one of the challenging things, and you put everyone in a big conference together, and it's very entertaining to kind of watch.
It is. Really weird. What were your general overall impressions of Texas? Because I came away very impressed with at least the Dallas area. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, I loved Texas. We've been wanting to go for a long time. I don't know. that I would want to live in Texas because I love the mountains so much, and there just weren't any. Like I felt like the horizon was missing something.
I have a very
went on.
Yeah, I have a very good sense of direction. This is the first place I've ever been to where I was like, I don't know what direction I'm facing right now. Like literally, if I was working law enforcement down there, I'd be screwed.
And their roads were like spaghetti.
There's so many freeways.
There's so
Holy
many.
cow. And granted, here we don't have very many, but even back in the Portland and Seattle area, we only have like a couple main freeways that run either north, south, or east, west, obviously. But yeah, Dallas was like so complicated to navigate.
But it was clean.
It was so clean. We kept commenting about how clean it was.
And the people were so stinking nice.
So nice.
At the restaurants and stuff.
Yes.
They were so nice, and everyone was awesome.
Everybody was great. It was that Southern hospitality. You could feel it for sure. A lot of ma'ams, a lot of sirs, a lot of thank yous, and like such a little gesture again, but that goes a long way with us. But yeah, I missed the mountains. Coming back home was great. Yeah. The air here, it's such a great reminder of like how fresh the air is in the Pacific Northwest, thanks to all of our trees. But Dallas as a whole, as far as being like a metropolitan area, could not have been more impressed. Like super clean, not a lot of riffraff. We went to like downtown, and we saw a couple transients there. But I mean, compared to like Portland, Seattle, or LA last year when we went.
Yeah.
Night and day.
Yeah, I preferred Texas. So I did notice that like out here, we have a billion stars. And I was trying to film the hotel at night. I'm like, there's no stars.
Yeah.
So that was weird.
Yeah.
But it's so light there, and like it never stops. Here at 8 p.m., everyone goes in their home.
8 p.m.
And they light their fire. 6 dinner time.
Depends on the time of year.
After dinner time, it's like very few cars on the road. There's no road lights or anything like that. Street lights. Yep. It's just dark. All the businesses shut down at 5. It's very different from like a city.
Extremely.
Like Dallas.
And it's nice to get a break from that, I will say. Like I love our life here. I love our lifestyle. I love the way things function in our area. But it is nice to get away and to remind ourselves of like what's actually out there and the way that, most people are living. I think it's a great thing for the kids to get to experience because they don't really have a sense of that. Like we live in a bubble here. We really do. Like it's an unintended consequence of moving to such an isolated place, but it makes it interesting. Like the first couple nights there, I remember we were walking to the restaurant. I'm like, I'm not used to so much like stimulation and people hollering. I was looking around. I'm just like, I'm so not used to this, and like I'm so not prepared for this anymore. Like I didn't know how to deal with it. It was too much.
We wanted to go so it was our first night there. We were on vacation. The kids had their own room, which is great. So the kids get a room, we get a room, and it's connected with like a door.
The adjoining rooms.
Yeah, the adjoining room. So they were watching a movie and they were going to bed because it was like 11 o'clock. And you're like, let's go get a drink.
Yeah.
And it's our first night of vacation. So we went down there and it was so loud. And there were like drunk 22-year-olds everywhere. And there were these chairs you sit in and you spin, and they were all drunk and they were tipping over. And we're like, what?
We're out of place.
Yeah.
We felt extremely old. Again, even though I know we're not that old, we just felt old.
Yeah. And then we like found this other bar, and it's like from the window to the wall. And like all these people were dancing. I'm like, we can't go in there.
Yeah. It was just a lot. Like even the lights. Remember that one wall had they had the different images they were putting. I was like, I can't. Like,
we just want to get a drink, and like, we needed like a
lounge.
I
wanted to go somewhere quiet and sit and share a drink with you, and we couldn't find that.
Yeah, and then eventually we found the hotel, but it was like last call.
That was insanely expensive too. I didn't even tell you what we paid for those.
I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, that's the most expensive drink I've ever had, I think.
Yeah, I think they ripped us off.
But a great time was had. You want to touch upon the conflict that's happening in Israel?
Yeah, I mean, we might as well. So it's when we got back on Saturday, the day that it was going on. My parents were staying here and watching the animals for us. My dad's really into like biblical history and all of that. So he was having a discussion with Eli, who's also very into biblical history. Mm-hmm. And they were talking, he was talking about, like the Shiites and the Israelis and like all these battles that are going to be occurring. And then he turned on but he's like, you don't have to worry about that for a long time. And then he turned on the news. He's like, never mind, it's happening right now.
Yeah, literally.
And we were like, crazy. What? And we looked over and it's all like live. Israel's been attacked and like all these people were killed and hostages were taken. And so we were all just kind of glued to the TV, especially Eli because he's really interested in history and wars, particularly like World War II. And so he's kind of been anticipating World War III, but with like a streak of fear. And so this has really kind of sucked him in. And I think it's something for parents to be aware of or grandparents to be aware of, like just in our talk, because we were openly talking about it and like, what could this lead to? And then every day it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And we were watching drone footage of like Gaza and it just looked like a wasteland. And it was so kind of horrifying to see. And then you hear...
Horrifying to see because of the level of destruction, right?
Yeah. Yeah, horrifying to see because of the level of just what's playing out and how this could escalate. And then you hear like, oh, you know, Lebanon's becoming involved. And then you hear like, okay, Russia's now thinking like maybe it's going to increase its attack on the Ukraine. And
then a lot of ifs out there.
Yeah. And then like China's starting to weigh in on what they think Israel should do. And then it's like, yeah, Iran, and then there's this money, and then like, are they going to release it? And so there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and there's been a lot of conversation in our home about like the ifs and a lot of questions from the kids, and we don't necessarily want to touch upon like the details of the conflict per se because it becomes very hyper politicized, and people's emotions start to flare up. But like for us as parents, from the kids' perspective, we had a conversation amongst ourselves about like being like 8 or 9 years old back in the early 90s when Desert Storm began. And I vividly remember being in our living room of our small little condo that we were living in at the time, and watching our like square 32-inch TV and seeing the footage of the missiles that were being launched, and it terrified the crap out of me. And I know now the same things are happening with our kids, with Eli in particular, because of the interest that he has had and because of the research that he's done on past wars, World War II in particular. So he asks these questions and you can sense the fear in him, just because he doesn't have a really firm grasp or understanding of what the implications are of everything that's happening and what that looks like for us.
Yeah.
But
I didn't realize how big the world was and everything when I was 8 years old.
Right.
And so when I saw the stuff with Desert Storm, it terrified me as well. And I never went to my parents with it. So I just went to bed worried that like all of a sudden planes and bombs and stuff would be in our neighborhood the next day.
Yeah, that's the same thing I thought too. Like soldiers are going to be running around outside of our condo.
Yeah, right. Like I thought that what I was watching on TV was in America and that it was going to eventually be at our home and we would be, you know, exiled, and like I didn't know what was going on. And I think we had to literally get a map out and show Eli, like this is where this conflict's going on. But and this is where we live. Granted, you know, if
it's
this
not a matter
escalates,
of proximity. And like I've had a hard time from the parental standpoint of like answering his questions adequately, because I don't want to be like making like over promising him like, oh no, we're fine, we're safe. You know, like you don't know what may happen in the future. I can't read the future, nobody can, but I want to offer him reassurance with also being like realistic of the potential possibilities. And it's a hard thing. I know you're making a face because you don't think that that's worthwhile.
I don't really like that approach. I know that you're really about like, we've always been very open and honest with our kids, but I think in a situation like this with an 8-year-old that's worried and going, like he had a worried look going to sleep. And I think reassurance is more important because the likelihood of it coming to America is not very great right now.
I agree.
And if it started to go in that direction, like we could start having those conversations. But for now, I think it's important to say, this is where we live and this is where this is happening. And, you know, you're okay.
You're okay. And we will keep you safe. We will do everything in our power to keep you safe. For sure. Like I'm not trying to scare our kid.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to have that burden.
I don't want to over assure him either, if that makes sense. I'm not going into graphic detail with him. I'm just saying like there are a lot of ifs and there are a lot of possibilities, and as it stands right now, we're safe, we're good, we're going to absolutely look after you and our entire family. But
you're not allowed to talk to Eli anymore.
No, you've heard what I've said to him. Have I said anything to him that you think has been out of line?
No, but I don't think you've offered him enough reassurance.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
I'll do better. Sorry.
No, I think both of us have fallen short with our conversation around him, because when we talk about it or when the news is on, like even just having the news on or a podcast playing or the radio or anything like that that's talking about it, it sounds so scary and frantic.
It is.
And he just zeroes in on it. This morning he woke up and put on the live news to see what had happened overnight.
But it does scare me. This is what I'm saying. Like it legitimately does. It doesn't scare me. It concerns me.
Yeah.
Like legitimately, I'm concerned.
Yeah, no.
Seriously.
the world is in a very interesting, not good interesting, in a bad interesting place. There's a lot of tensions, a lot of countries involved, a lot of money, a lot of ego, a lot of power, a lot of fighting,
of history.
a lot of history. I mean, these are war of biblical proportions, literally.
Yeah.
And it's boiling over, and other countries are seeing it as opportunities or as they have a dog in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
And it could erupt into more. It may fizzle down. It may die out. It may escalate. We don't really know.
It's not going to fizzle anytime soon.
It has many times.
It
didn't in the early 2000s. It did in the 90s. It did in the 60s. Like, there's been many escalations over there that have led to peaceful resolutions.
Yeah. It's just
It's
an interesting one to have to navigate as a parent. Like, it's such a new world that we seem to be living in.
See what you did there.
Yeah, you get it. Sorry, inside joke. You guys will be let in here very soon.
Very soon.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting thing it's just an interesting conversation to have to consider having with your 8-year-old child. Didn't anticipate that.
We have been so spoiled for so long.
We have been.
In this part of the world. We have lived in peace. I mean, like, you could say, like, oh, there was 9/11 and there was the Afghan war and the Iraq war. But in America, I mean, pretty much since, like, the Civil War, I mean, World War II, everything that was always fought somewhere else.
You had Hawaii, Pearl Harbor,
yeah.
41.
I mean, these are attacks, so they're not like it's not like we lived in Poland or something.
People died. Trust me, as somebody from Hawaii, I remember speaking to my grandma about December 7th, 1941.
Yeah, if you were on that island, that probably felt like the end of the world.
They were being attacked. She's telling me about, living in Kapahulu, looking up and seeing the Japanese planes with the Japanese emblems on them flying overhead. And it'd be terrifying. And seeing the smoke from Pearl Harbor a few miles away and all that. So, yeah.
Yeah. But also, like, I just feel like our generation and our parents' generation, I mean, they did have Vietnam. Our parents' generation had Vietnam. So I guess it would start with our generation and our kids' generation have lived in relative peace and prosperity and opportunity and everything here in America. And so to have that disrupted or to worry about that, it's just something that we haven't dealt with yet. I mean, the generations before us all lived through these major events. There was World War II, World War I, there's Spanish flu. Like, there were like these massive.
That was Melissa's nightmare.
My nightmare. So there were, like these huge, and it's easy to say like, oh, COVID or something, but that was not Spanish flu. Yeah. Like that wiped out. Like, so I don't know. So I think we've been a little spoiled and maybe we're soft.
100%. Yeah. Look around. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, we just don't have that same World War II generation fiber.
It's just weird having to have conversations like that with Eli. Earlier today, we were talking about Nevaeh, about the institution of a draft and that being enacted. And it makes for interesting conversations. And it had me revisiting 2001, back when you and I had turned 18 and 9/11 just happened. And I remember filling out my draft card, and it's an interesting, very concerning thing to have to think about. It's
one thing to think about when it's you, but it's something else to think about when it's your children.
Yep.
It's scarier when it's your children.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I thought of, is that if they did enact a draft, or, hey, our kid, I mean, we're going to have a soon-to-be 14-year-old son, and our daughter's turning 18 next year, and it's just scary times.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, right now in our country, it's only males in the draft, but I think that if something major were to go down, that would probably be reversed, and I think that it would probably include women.
I don't know how that works, but very concerning times. A lot of awful, horrific things happening over in Israel, and hearing all of the periodic updates as to the things that are occurring there, and then seeing the subsequent fallout, especially again locally. To go back to the social media space, where there's so much like ugliness being celebrated and shared, and so much just misunderstanding. And again, we had a conversation about like these younger folks, younger American college age students going out, referring to the Jews, the people of Israel in this particular circumstance, as Nazis, which was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Do you know the history of Nazis and Jews?
Your thoughts to yourself at this point. But
yeah, like if you don't know history, maybe just like, don't speak on it. It's very, Yeah, I don't know. As if our country needed one more thing to be divided about. Now it's like, oh, what side of this are you falling on?
And now we have social media to amp all of that up.
Exasperate it, yeah.
Yay, social media.
Yeah, so you got to be really cautious of what your kids and grandkids are doing right now because there's a lot of hate being spewed and there's a lot of fear being put out there. And I think we just need to all check on our kids and make sure that they're not internalizing this and having fear without letting us in on it, letting us know, because kids can carry a lot of fear or doubts or worries and not tell the adults in their life. So we all need to check in on our littles.
For sure. Good advice. All right. You want to start winding this thing down? Keep it a little bit shorter. You want to touch upon the toy drive and the fundraiser real quick? Yeah.
So this Saturday, we are not doing a Good Simple Living video. And that is only because we came back to hundreds and hundreds of boxes and packages for the toy drive, which is fantastic.
It's awesome. Thank you guys so much for that.
Yeah, fantastic. So normally when we do the toy drive, we're here.
Yes.
So for the first 8 days, we weren't here. And so all these boxes, and the first wave is always the biggest. And so normally I stay on top of it. I'll spend 3, 4, 5 hours a night out there organizing, unpackaging, breaking down boxes. This time that didn't happen. And it kind of built up on us like a pyramid. It completely filled the shop. Yeah. And so we were spending days doing this and we weren't able to get back to work on the addition build, and the toy drive takes priority over making a video.
It does right now. It's a very busy time of year for us with the toy drive and fundraiser, and credit to Melissa once again. She really does work very, very hard with this. Like the number of packages that she opens and then sets aside and then organizes, and then Kaimani and I usually will like break down the boxes, go run everything to the dump, and then after taking all the mess and all the clutter and dumping that at the dump, we go back to the post office and it's wave number 2. It's like we never get caught up on it.
No. As long as the wish list is open, the packages come in by the hundreds.
Yeah, which we are so grateful for. Seriously, what you guys do for these kids, again, this is a you effort, and you guys come through every year. This is year number 4. We look forward to it all year, but it is an extremely busy time of year for us. So
it's very busy. So we're so sorry. We hate skipping videos, but there will be no video this Saturday because the toy drive had to take priority. But so we're going to get all caught up.
We're going live.
We're going to go live on Saturday. So we will see you guys live Saturday night on the main channel, Good Simple Living. And I think we're going to finally establish what it is that we're going to be doing for the toy drive.
Because we have an idea. I'm nervous about it.
Yeah.
Because this is probably primarily going to fall upon me, but I'm up for the task. I'm up for it for sure. But it's going to be like legitimately physically challenging.
Yeah, it's going to be
depending upon how things go.
Yeah, depending on how things go. Yeah. So we have a goal of raising $25,000. Down below, I'm going to leave the link if you want to donate towards the $25,000 goal. And then also I have a link to the Amazon wish list. We are adopting 25 families. Some of those families have 5 kids. So you're talking 7 people per family. So when you say 25 families, it's not 25 people, it's hundreds of people. And then we're going to be filling their toy closet for the hospital as well. So we'll have a link for that. We'll have a link for the PayPal. And then we will see everyone live Saturday.
Beautiful.
All
right. Anything else, Mama?
I don't think so.
All right. We appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we will see you, I guess, Saturday for the live. All right, sounds good.
And next week, Chip and Joanna.
I forgot. Oh, we didn't start off with our Chip and Joanna this week. I forgot.
Well, they forgot, or they would have been here, but they're going to be here next week if they're not busy.
All right, cheers it up.
Yeah.
Love you.
Love you.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.